you know what? I could probably send that message better than you, Terry. Or why don't you have me have that conversation with that bank? All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Believe me, my CFO is far, far better with bank relationships than I am. No, I mean, I always view the role of a CEO or someone who thinks in that manner as planting seeds.
Yeah.
And if you don't allow your team to then take it and run with it, then they have no skin in it. They have no emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
So I, the way that I always approach this, and I mean, within inside the music company, one of my key meetings every single week is
Journal, we are here today. I'm excited to be introducing visionary entrepreneur, visionary leader, and master motivator, head of Network Music Group, and also CEO of the digital app Y Yoga, Terry McBride, coming to us from Vancouver, British Columbia. Terry, great to have you on the show, and love to hear, I guess, to start sort of the background story of starting the music label. It looks like fresh out of college, and then take us to present day and the sort of the similarities or why you would get into this new business. Not new, it's been around for a while. Yoga.
thanks, Kurt. Nice to be here. Well, I mean, the history of network starts 40 years ago, 1984. So, it kind of reached a point in my life where I had to make a choice.
Hmm.
Sport of choice was field hockey, which is the wrong type of hockey. We
Yeah,
happen to be Canadian.
it's hockey if you're in
It's
Canada,
hockey,
right?
and I was playing at the national level, but there's never
Wow.
going to one could never make a living from that. I was at UBC. I was in civil engineering. Back then, it was if I wanted to be an architect, it was a 7-year plan, and I was literally 3.5 years in.
Yeah.
I was having a hard time seeing myself do another 3.5 years.
Hmm.
And then my real love, which was music. So I took a sabbatical from civil engineering, took a sabbatical from playing field hockey, and focused on the light music business. First couple of years were a bit tough, and started off as an artist manager, not knowing anything. Started to learn slowly but surely, and then decided I wanted to start a record label, and I started it with a very good friend of mine who's still my business partner, Mark Jowett, and we started releasing music, and we didn't know a single thing. And probably for the first 10 years, we would have done better if we were living off welfare than what we were there. So, needless to say, during definitely the first 5 years, I did everything from slinging pizzas to I was a barista for one day and got fired. It was too slow. To working in a record store, to DJing at a nightclub, to sometimes doing weekend nights at a fish plant. Anything to make money, and then every other hour was then spent on the record label. And Mark did the exact same thing. So it was all self-funded. I think we got a $5,000 loan from the bank, and about every year we pay it back, and then we have to take it back out again. Finally, the guy said, "Look, I'm just going to give you a revolving, access it and pay
Yeah.
it back as you go. I don't want to have to keep doing paperwork."
Yeah. Not bad.
And then, we like slowly built it. Probably our first known success was Sarah McLachlan, which started off very much in Canada.
I've heard of her. Yes.
Yeah, and then spread to the US. And literally on her Servicing, which I believe was her fourth album, we like finally had that breakthrough moment. And that was all, also connected to a traveling festival called Lilith Fair, which was the first all-female traveling festival. And on average, we did 15 to 25,000 people a night. And we did it in 30 to 40 different US and Canadian cities. And it was a phenomenal success. We did that for 3 years and then realized that we just couldn't keep doing it. It was just dominating our like whole lives.
That's a big
And
undertaking. That's a business unto itself. You coordinate a festival. Good Lord.
yeah, and trying to herd all of those other artists and their, managers,
Yeah.
it was challenging. It was challenging. It's,
Yeah.
it's like, one thing to manage your own artists. It's another thing to have to deal with other managers and all of their quirks, right? So,
Now, how did you we've had a couple of conversations prior to this, but how did you I asked you about the album on your wall to over your left shoulder. How did you get in touch with the folks involved in that record? Maybe you can tell the audience who that band is and how you get involved with them.
oh, Coldplay. So this is probably back in, I might not have the dates exactly right, about 2020 approximately. We heard the demo of a song called Yellow, and we were part of the EMI distribution system at that time. And it turned out that all of the US labels associated with EMI had turned down releasing it. Which is, you like shake your head now, but if you go back to that time and like place, the pathway for this type of artist was on alternative radio in the US, so terrestrial radio.
Hmm.
And there was no British music on terrestrial radio. It was all American.
Hmm.
And the last British band that had success was Oasis. And then Oasis did a really good job of coming to North America and pissing everybody off. So American radio was over British music. So I could understand how Capitol and EMI and all of the, labels at that time said no. We heard the song and went, yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I, phoned up the managing director of Parlophone, who was a, very good friend. I said, I'd like to release this record. And by the way, I also want to release a band called Doves. He said, Terry, you can't release both. Pick one. I said,
Yeah.
might pick Coldplay. Okay, you got to send someone over to meet with the band. Right then I was going on a holiday. And if I had canceled that, I, probably would have ended my first marriage, a decade earlier than when it ended.
Yeah.
So sent one of our managers over. The meetings went well. And we released a little song called Yellow, and then spent about 9 months turning it into, a top 10 single, and essentially breaking the band.
The rest is history. What year was that? Yeah, I thought you said 2020. That was much earlier than 2020.
I have to look. What does this thing say? Doesn't actually give a date. Hang on. This is 2000.
Yeah. 20
So
years off.
yeah. So yeah. And
What?
I think the bands ended up in such a great spot. I mean, you go and see them live, it's inspirational. And the fact that playing that type of event and communicating that type of emotion to 70, 80,000 people a night, that is such a great thing.
I don't know anybody that does not like Coldplay's music. It was the first song. Yellow is actually what a coincidence. The first song that my son, who's 10 years old, would sing, would walk around the house singing all day long. He heard it on the radio and he just, Alexa, play Coldplay Yellow. Alexa, play that song. And it was just one of those songs where I'll never forget it because it was my son's first favorite song, first favorite band.
So that leans in to a really good point. What is music? So lawyers will say it's intellectual property. Artists will say it's choruses, lyrics, bridges, verses. It's actually songs are emotions. So when someone attaches their emotion to that song,
Oof.
it becomes theirs and becomes a
Oh,
bookmark with inside their life. So whenever they hear that song, they can go right back to that time and place and that emotion. And that is the power of music. And you as a like parent can see it with inside your like kids.
I get the chills when you're talking about it because yeah, I'll never forget, that song for that simple reason. My kid
Yeah.
was 6 or 7 years old. I think it was during the pandemic, 2020, when he started singing it, which is just, it's eerie that you brought that up right now in this interview. Fantastic story. Really,
Yeah. I
really
mean, that's
powerful.
what music is. Music's just emotions, and people share emotions, right?
So
And that's why, the mixed cassette worked well, the mixed CD worked well. And that's why playlists work really, really well. It's like sharing part of who and what you are.
it's all front brain stuff too. It's like that's where you wear your emotions. That's where the emotional part of the brain is,
Uh,
and that's what actually drives behavior, right? And I'm a little bit slightly obsessed with this topic of, as a CEO, how do you tap into that? How do you tap into the emotions of the people that you work with, your coworkers, your employees, to drive action? And to me, much easier to start with the emotion, or to tap into the emotion to drive action, than it is to the logic part of the brain, right? To the reason.
Yeah, logic and the pragmatic part should come later. Should like come at the back end. If you can imagine something and you can close your eyes and you can see it, then the pathway to creating is actually backwards.
That's the start.
And guess what? If you're walking backwards, you're gonna trip, you're gonna fall down. Doesn't matter. You know exactly what it looks like. When I started the yoga company, I knew exactly what I wanted the studio to look like. Um, it, it, I was building a studio for myself. So one could say I was being selfless, but I could, or selfish, but
Yeah, selfish.
I,
Yeah,
but I actually viewed it quite opposite in that there's millions of me. And so if I build something that I love, chances are others will love it too. Not exactly for the same reasons, but
right.
for those same emotions. And if you
You
look at,
assume I'm feeling a certain way about this. I would imagine everyone else is going to feel the same way too, if it's pretty universal.
yeah, I mean, I had traveled a lot in Asia, and I could find yoga studios that I loved in Asia, but I couldn't find one in my hometown. So I just decided to build one. And yoga and music, same business. The
That's it.
monetization of emotions. They're both thousands of years old, and it's all about emotions.
Yoga is about emotions. That's
It's the monetization of emotions.
the
The same as
monetization of emotions.
yeah, the same as music.
It's fascinating. Very,
Yeah.
very interesting. I wonder about communicating emotions, or communicating a vision around um, what you see when you close your eyes. How does a visionary leader like you, a motivational person, communicate that vision um, to others that they work with? Do you have, I guess the question is, do you have help with that? Or does it start with
Well,
you and then you have sort of a pragmatic CFO type or analytical that says, oh, here's how we want to bring that to fruition. Here's how we want that business to start. And maybe another personality type that says, um, you know what, I could probably send that message better than you, Terry, or why don't you have me have that conversation with that bank? All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe me, my CFO is far, far better with bad relationships than I am. No, I mean, I always view the role of a, CEO or someone who thinks in that manner as planting seeds.
Yeah.
And if you don't allow your, team to then take it and run with it, then they have no skin in it. They have no emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
So I, the way that I always, approach this, and I mean, within inside the music company, one of my key meetings every single week is with the analytics team. And
Mhm.
and the analytics team is like a mixture of analysts, software dev, programmers, data scientists. So it's a broad collection. And we talk about broad topics, but then we go down rabbit holes. And I'll go, you know what? My gut says if we can see that, then we should be able to see this.
Yep.
And then it's kind of like a challenge to them. And then sometimes 3, 4 weeks later, they come back and says, we actually can see that, and this is what it looks like.
Wow.
So and this happens 20, easily 20 times a year, where just one of those sparks, they run with it. But if it doesn't resonate with them, they're not going to run with it.
Right.
And then if it comes up later, I have to frame it differently because I'm not the expert. I'm just a generalist.
Yep.
I have ideas, I have intuitions, and I really trust my intuition because annoyingly, it's always right. And everyone's intuition is usually 100% right. It's just a matter of whether you're going to pay attention to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a very yogic thing. It's like, living in the moment, right? Like listen to what you're feeling. Whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally, whether it's spiritually, whether it's you're just dreaming up things, there's a reason for it. Pay attention to it. I almost call it like split conscience. It's like when you're in a dream and you've been in that dream multiple times, now you decide to consciously change the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're dreaming, but your conscious is split, and now you're going to change the end. And even if you have kids and you have that same conversation with those kids and you know where it's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to change their behavior, throw them off by actually having a different reaction than what you did the 5 previous times.
Interesting.
And you will see them shift. It might only be a 1 or 2 degree shift, but a year later, that's a 10-degree shift.
Wow.
So it's life is business. So there's things that you can do in business that you can apply to life and vice versa. To me, they're completely interchangeable. They're directly related,
Yeah.
right?
As long as you're authentic, it works, right? If you're authentic in your business relationships, you're authentic with your family,
Yep.
you'll get alignment. Is what I've found. The next question was going to be around alignment. How do you duplicate Terry McBride in Los Angeles or one of these other cities that your company is operating in to have those same types of conversations and team buy-in?
It comes down to allowing people to have emotional skin in the game.
Emotional skin of
So
the game.
yeah, so if I lay out the whole vision, then people are just acting on it. They got no attachment to it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have any of their ideas in it. There's no emotional attachment. It's just
Mm-hmm.
purely I'm getting paid to do this. Where if you lay out something that's very broad, and then you allow people to run with things, then I call it, rather than putting people in a sandbox, put them on a beach with the understanding that every night the tide's going to wash it clean and they get to start fresh.
Okay. How do you
And
do
that's
that?
kind of how I approach business.
How do you do this? Give me an example of how you create this beach blue sky type of a session with your key people, and they just take it and run with it, and you say, "Yeah, piece of cake. That was me." Like I got him to do that, but
A good example is sitting at a fishing lodge with my 5 senior people, right? And they're talking about, I'm obviously at some point, I'm going to retire. It's probably, 5 years away. And
Mhm.
they're like, we'd like to organize the company in this way. And I'm listening to them and finally I go, no, you need to organize the company like an octopus.
Okay.
There's a central brain and there's 8 arms. And each of those arms are their own individual community, which means their
Mhm.
own individual record label run by their own individual managing director.
Mm.
If you do that, you create the major label vision of the 60s and 70s without all the BS attached to it. So you kind of create a matrix setup where your common services like royalties and finance and like everything go across in the horizontals, but the verticals are all communities
Mhm.
with experts that know how to work that particular type of music.
That's the
Yeah.
dream right
I
there.
said, so if you set it up that way, you also get rid of glass ceilings, because if all you do is do what we've already done, there's only one CEO. There's only one president. You're going to lose all of your middle, upper, like, management people because they've got
Mhm.
nowhere to go. And
Right,
if I leave, then my like current president's going to run it for the next 10 years. Like,
right.
so you've got 20 like people lining up for this. It just doesn't work. Where if you create the octopus, they each get to run something.
So who's the head of the octopus? Who's the head? Like, what is it? Shared services or shared resources is the head? A shared set of core values or the way that you do business, or not
Yeah.
even core value.
Culture.
Okay, culture. Yep.
Culture. Yeah. Those are all like shared. And then the trick is to make sure that these success stories and like the reasons why they were successful is like shared on the
Yep.
horizontals
Horizontal. Yep.
to see where this success on this arm of the octopus can actually work on this arm of the octopus. And the only way that you can do that is if certain services are actually shared and
Mm-hmm.
certain services are actually expert.
Mm, okay. So how have you dealt with conflict? How has conflict been dealt with in that scenario? Have you ever had, let's say, one arm of the octopus say, you know what, I think I'm going to be the head of the octopus now, or I think I'm going to do, I'm going to go in a different direction. Do you save those people, or do they just you just say, hey, it was great, nice knowing you, and it was great working with you over
Uh,
the years, but
you
we
know,
don't have the
I
same.
haven't really run into that yet, so I can't really say. I don't think you want to be the head of the octopus. It's like very operational.
Yeah.
It's not artistic. It's not emotionally fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a certain type of person who wants to be an ops person.
Mm-hmm.
So where if you're a managing director of one of the communities and you're probably in that community because you love that music,
Mm-hmm.
then you can build that community to 100 artists. So that's probably 5 to 7 years of like a lot of work.
For sure, I would think. I I'm
And
curious
then
about.
you run your own P&L.
Okay, you run your own
So,
P&L.
so you're kind of in control of your destiny, of your emotional destiny,
Mm-hmm.
of your bonus attached to your P&L.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of get to run your own business within inside the greater business. And if you really think of the major labels of the 60s, 70s, Warner's was a collection of labels, whether it was Atlantic or Warner Brothers or Reprise or Geffen, right? And all of those labels had a different palette, usually the palette of the person who actually ran it. So they were running community labels, even though they probably didn't view it that way.
Yeah. Tell me about wow, there's so many different directions I can take this conversation. I guess one of them is around you mentioned emotional, not equity, emotional buy-in, right?
Yeah.
Is the key. Is there I guess this is a structural question. Is there other owners of the label, or is it just you and your president? How does that work? Is
No,
that
I mean we have our investor base is probably about 40 people, of which two of them are institutional. One is a family business.
uh
A group of very big, very well-known artists whose names I can't give.
mm-hmm,
And then there's people that have just been very successful in business.
mm-hmm,
And if you kind of look at my board, you can kind of see how I've like set it up.
right.
I've got someone like a Roger, McNamee that comes from tech and is a very well-known tech, VC. He's, pretty much retired now, but he's was probably, early, money in Yelp and Facebook and all
Yep.
of these things. And, started a company called Elevation that had three of the four YouTube boys in it, right?
Yep.
And
I've heard.
then, I got Jeff Rosen, who's Bob Dylan's manager, right? So you can begin to see how I've actually structured it. And then I got Cameron like Strang, who was the previous chairman of Warner Brother Records, right? And then I got a couple of finance guys, and I've like balanced it between music people, tech people, and finance people, because In today's music business, you really are a combination of those three things.
Wow. So this is like a who's who in music and business moguls, global music and business moguls around the world. What advice would you give to someone that was, the 20 something you that was going around, as a barista, bouncing around to different,
A barista for one day. Remember, I got fired.
get fired after one day. There's a story there too, maybe on a different podcast, but I would love to,
It was very humbling.
for sure. There was growth there too, right? I mean, anytime you have a perceived failure or something that did not meet expectations in your own life, right? There's a lesson learned.
The great thing is if all you ever do turns out good or turns out right, then you learn absolutely nothing.
You learn nothing.
You only learn through the opportunity of your mistakes. And that's part of network culture. I would rather have you fail. Just fail quickly.
Fail quickly.
Yeah, I mean, don't be loyal to your failures.
Right.
Understand what they are, and try to look at it with that kind of split conscience. Like, okay, what was I supposed to learn here? Not versus what did I do wrong? That's not the question. What was I supposed to learn here?
Do you talk this way to your employees and coworkers? You were very open with this
Yeah.
part of the story and with
Yeah.
your early struggles and with the loans. I would imagine that's inspiring to hear that from a CEO, right? About these early days. It kind of just brings down the walls.
Yeah. No,
Communication.
I've always been this way. I'm very motivated. I very much know what I want to do, but I'm also very, very open because a lot of what we're doing, others can do too, but they're always going to be 2 to 3 years behind us. It doesn't matter.
Would you be as successful today if you weren't that open? If you weren't like this, you think is this one
That's
of the
that's
keys?
a great question. I have no idea. I mean, I probably wouldn't have the culture within inside the company that we have. It would probably be very, very top down, which I don't think is to like anyone's benefit.
There's something about you, there's something about your personality where you're like, yeah, I want to have more conversations with that guy. Like
Yeah.
I like you're just very easy to talk to. And you're very so much success, but not in an intimidating way in any way. So I would think um that plays well, right? With your employees and your coworkers.
I guess so. I mean, we have really good retention. We have what I call boomerangs, so people that started with us and then went elsewhere, either to get the MBAs or maybe work at another company, and then a decade later they come back to network. Right?
Wow.
So
That's something to be said for that. It's impressive. Tell me a little bit about your vision around why yoga. Yoga is, I think I've tried it a couple of times with my wife. Um, it was during a certain period. I'm not sure why we did it. It kicked my butt. It was much harder than I thought it was going to be, but it was amazing. I was just used to either boxing or lifting weights. I'd
yeah.
love to get back to it, but what's the vision with digital yoga, having the digital app versus the studio? What are you seeing there, and where's that going?
So let me give you a bit of a history. So similar to you, I did lots of sports. I did lots of tennis. And when I went to do yoga, I went in there going, this is going to be easy,
Right.
and it was utterly humbling. And I can remember like a decade later bringing some Olympic swimmers who are all shaped the same way. They're all 6'4". They're cut like this,
Yeah. V-shaped
right?
back. Yeah.
Really long, long muscles. And I can, remember bringing this person in who won a medal at the London Games. And he was right behind me. And two slightly overweight ladies were right next to him. And he's like, right? And start going through all the poses, and then they're like doing them all. And I could see him at some point, he's starting to shake. And at a certain point, he's looking at them with the understanding that they're doing the pose and he couldn't.
They're doing the what?
They're doing the poses and he couldn't
And he couldn't do the poses.
because he had the big muscles. You didn't have the balance muscles. So he kept hard at that practice for the next 3 months because he understood that those small balance muscles could take a tenth of a second off him leaving the block. And he, credits it to winning the medal. So it just, yoga's a different type of fitness. And I highly recommend people do it because it's about the balance muscles. It's
You
about
had
standing
me.
on one leg with your eyes closed and your foot in some other direction. If you can do that, then you're actually training your, body different. And when you really get to a certain spot, you'll do most of your yoga with your eyes closed, and then it becomes a moving meditation. All you are is with inside your body,
Mm.
listening to your body for an hour. That's a meditation. The power of that and how you go into that practice and how you come out, completely different person.
Now I'm starting to get it. But you had me at balance because you're talking to somebody that for years I've struggled with coordination. Sometimes, my son I see it with my son as well. He's an athlete. He's a very good athlete, but every once in a while he'll just trip and fall or just, just certain things where you go, man, I wish I had a little better balance, a little more coordination.
Ask them to stand on one leg, put their hands in the air, and close their eyes. They will fall over, or they'll start shaking because they don't have the small muscle structures that they need to have in their ankles for
Mm.
when they're 50, 60, 70, and 80. Like that,
Boy, is that important. Yeah. Does that get ever more important in those years?
yeah, because most people as they get older fall, and it's usually the falls that break the hips or break the
Right.
shoulders and cause
Crushes
the
your will.
rapid
And it crushes
cause
your
the
will.
rapid yeah cause the rapid descent, right? So having those balance muscles is super super key. But yoga is, when you get it to a certain level, it might start off being a physical practice, but at the end of the day, it actually becomes a mental practice.
I can see that. I can see if you feel like you're in balance or you're physically balanced, how the mental and emotional state becomes more balanced too. You just feel more. Um, this is me imagining what the feeling is, right? To be a yoga,
Well, it's like when you're in the zone with inside a sport,
mm,
tennis or soccer, when like you're in
mm,
that zone, you're in it.
ooh,
You were in a meditative spot.
yeah.
That is when you get to that point with inside yoga,
Oh,
it's a moving meditation. It's you can like visualize what you're going to do and where it's going to go. And any like elite athlete, so much of it is visualization, right? So yoga is about that. And you kind of start to get there because if you've got your eyes closed and you're bouncing on one leg, if you don't focus on what you're doing, you're going to fall over. So every other thought's gone. You're just trying to hold this damn pose, right? You're not thinking about anything else. It's almost like, it's almost your flight response, right? So you're like locked in, which means everything else is locked out. And it's the beginning of being present with inside the moment.
I've had this conversation with close friends in sports, and I'm glad you mentioned the word zone, but I'm 46 years old. To my recollection in sports, I've only ever been in the zone once.
Hmm.
And I remember it to this day, and I'll never forget it. I could describe it, but this interview isn't about me. Tell me a time when you felt you were in the zone, and what is that feeling? What does it mean to be in the zone, either in sports or in business or in yoga?
I mean, yoga, it's doing the practice with your eyes closed, right? I would say with inside sports, it's just that visualization. Like, I can like remember playing, tennis against my, partner Mark, and he like loves to do these short cuts across the like court, which make you haul your ass
Yep.
off court to get the damn ball. And
Yep.
then he comes to the net. So the only way that you can get it is to lob it over him.
Yep.
To do that, you got to be in the zone.
Right.
Like you have to visualize exactly
Right.
what you can do. because you're literally catching the ball about that far away from the ground when you're actually doing it. And it's that feeling. And when I like played field hockey, that was the adrenaline rush to me.
Yeah.
Was to get to the level that I was able to get to. It's like I had to be in the zone.
I would describe it as almost healthy adrenaline, because adrenaline, I'm told by some medical professionals, is not good for you.
It is not good for you. I
It's
mean,
actually not good.
runners get in that zone
Yeah.
where, you get really good at running 15, 20 minutes into,
Right.
a run. You're not thinking about running.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You're not looking around. You're like
Right.
thinking about some other issue.
Right.
So it's singular.
Yeah. And there's
You're
no
running.
distraction.
So your mind's one place and your, subconscious, which is making you run.
Yep.
The subconscious is doing one thing, the conscious is doing something completely different.
Yep.
That's kind of like in the zone.
Yeah. It's an amazing feeling. To me, it's a feeling of there's absolutely no distraction whatsoever happening up here. Nothing can shake your focus. Nothing can shake your focus, and you're not even trying to be focused. You're not even trying.
Well, you're not paying attention to anything else.
Right. Right.
Nothing else exists except what you're
Right.
doing.
Man, I could go on and on this topic forever, but I'm so glad you brought it up, and you have me very interested in looking into yoga after this interview.
Yeah, yoga, and there's so many lineages of yoga, sorry. So figure out the one that resonates with you.
Yeah.
Because then you'll actually stick with it and understand that as you progress through age, you will try other lineages, right? And yoga's yoga
Languages. Is that what you said? Languages?
lineages.
Lineages. Okay.
So different types of yoga. There's your hot yoga, there's your hathas, there's your flow, there's your power, there's your iyengar, and kundalini, and there's all these different like types, and they all bring different things to the table.
Hmm.
And part of why I created why yoga is a lot of studios only taught one lineage,
Ah,
sometimes two. And I'm like, that's not how people work. People have to find something to resonate with. And it might not, if it's not that lineage, they're not going to last more than a week. So allow them a 20-year path and you will create a community. And communities, or in like yoga shalas, which are safe places to practice, are incredibly valuable to the overall community. So
this has been one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever had, and I talk to a lot of people every day, every week. Let's do this again, Terry. There's a lot more questions I want to get to with you. I'd love to have a part 2 of Owner's Journal with Terry
sure.
McBride, because
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little more research into this yoga topic. But thank you very much for your time today, Terry, and
You're
now
more than
let's keep in
welcome.
touch.
Okay, take care.
Right.
Nailed it.
So yeah, so and like it's like uh whenever when everybody gets a promotion to a leadership position in our company, one of my conversations with them, I said, do you realize you may think this is a promotion, but you've actually taken a step towards servitude. The higher you go up in leadership, the more servant you have to be. So if people understand this, just a sec, I gotta send somebody in.
You're cooking right now. You're cooking right now, my friend.
Yeah, 20 minutes. Okay. If people understand that you're there to serve them, that changes the whole conversation platform,
100%.
right?
100%.
Right. And that's why when it goes to like the ultimate vision couldn't, I knew that it couldn't be something associated with our size, our wealth, like the buildings we created. Nothing, it couldn't be anything about that, because here we are. Our major mission is to become really big and famous and make me more money. I'm not sure how invigorating that is for the average employee, right? So what we settled on was it's the ultimate vision had to be something that they could feel a part of. And it was our ultimate vision is to be the leaders in making the construction industry better for everyone. So that I can go up to any employee and say, do you know that your ability to contribute that is well within your reach? And how do you do that? Well, treat people according to the values of our organization. That's one. I mean, we work in a very litigious, conflict-based industry.
Yeah.
Right? So if you want to make it better, how do you work to avoid litigation? How do you work towards, and like a lot of times their first impulse is, well, we got to become philanthropists. And I'm going, no. It's not about being a philanthropist. It's about delivering good value in a human way that people can appreciate the experience of working with you. If you do those things, you should be able to make money, which you need. I mean, you got
Agree,
to make money.
agree or disagree that this starts with communication and listening to your client. I mean, how do you avoid litigation with a person you're working with or a client you're working for?
Yeah. So, like the adage about most problems are 99% communication based is true, that exists for a reason, right? And I remember I learned this skill of rather than directing or establishing direction to solve a problem, my first effort is to ask questions. Because yeah, okay, so we're in the shit now. Something's happened. Owner's mad. Some trade's mad. It's good. It's looking ugly. Okay, I say that's where it is right now. We're gonna work on fixing it. But right now, go back in time and tell me if there's anything that you could have done, communicated, established, made to understand, cleared up that could have avoided the position you're in right now. 100% of the time, they said, yeah, if I'd have worded that differently, if I'd phoned them up and said, I sent you this message, do you understand? I want to make sure you're clear about my intent here, right? So yeah, it is about communication. I mean, nobody likes bad news, but nobody likes bad news that's a surprise, right? So don't surprise people, right?
Communicate early and often. And
Yeah. You know, the number one rule that I've actually come up with, I live by, and it's working on what I call the art form of what we do. It's like we have math and science, and then we have art. And to me, art is about 80% of the program. Because once you're dealing with humans, you can throw math and science basically out the window, right? So how do you get good at the 80%? So one of the things is understanding communication. So it's like my rule of thumb is, in communication, the message is bullshit. The delivery is everything.
we're creatures, we create, right? I mean, we're creative beings.
I could tell you something that would save your life. And if I don't deliver it in the right way, you're going to die. Right?
Give me an example of that. I love that.
It could be, let's see how that's a tough one to come up off the cuff, but it could be.
Oh, Kurt, we're building an
Well,
elevator.
it's like even
Yeah.
the tone, right? You know what? You know why we're behind budget or we're behind schedule is because you asked for this, you didn't do this, and you did this, and now we're asking for $100,000 in delay charges, right?
Okay.
So the correct delivery is we found ourselves in a kind of an unfortunate position here. We are documented in how we revealed the importance of this information in a timely way. We didn't get it. So this actually represents a direct cost to us. And I think I'd like to try to agree that we did our best to avoid this. But here we are nonetheless. So
That's
how do
great.
we actually negotiate this so we don't lose and you don't feel ripped off? Right.
Beautiful.
So it's just change of delivery, same message, or the same intent of the message.
You did two things. You said everything in the right tone, at the right pace, with humility. You used we a lot. It was, well, I guess you did more than two things. It was less accusational.
Right.
I'm up to five
Right.
things now that you did how you shifted the exact same message.
Right. I mean, really simple to that one is you're explaining to your carpenter, said, look at you, asshole, you really buggered that up. Right. Well, what do you expect? How do you expect improvement to come out of that start of a conversation? Right. There's better ways of doing it. And ways that will are actually engineered to give you better outcomes. Because once something's gone sideways, it's sideways. My granny used to tell me the only unforgivable sin is the one you continuously repeat to do. Right. So yeah, so the shit's going on. Okay, where do we have to go so that we can correct this so we don't have to happen again? So
There's a lot of wisdom coming out of this interview. We're up against the time now, but I think I like to ask an investment question. It kind of has to do with that capital, people, and time thing that I asked you earlier. But if you were handed whatever your definition of a fortune is to invest in your business, here's $10 million, here's $100 million, here's $1 million.
yeah.
How would you go about investing that? Where would you start right now?
Well, so the best investment that I can come up with currently is it's always people and technology. Right? So I believe that people do their best work if they have the right tools. That comes from my life as a carpenter, because I was a carpenter at one point and a superintendent. And I would always insist that my teams had the best tools. Right? So I would do that. But
One, two, people, technology, right?
yeah,
People,
people,
technology.
people, technology. Yeah, yeah. That would be the thing. And also maybe, this is something that was a transition from our original when I first took over. There was some older people in the company that they actually asked me a question as the new CEO. They said, would you ever sacrifice profit for this long-term improvement that you're trying to do? I said instantly, of course I would. And they were really dismayed at that answer, right? Because I would sacrifice profit. I said, well, yeah, I will sacrifice profit now for a gain in the future. I'll do that, right? So if that $10 million were there, and we've actually done it, we've actually, and one of the ways that actually comes into reality is we have built an overhead structure particularly about our talent development, which most people call HR. I refuse to use the word resources when it comes to human beings, but so we have talent development. We have more talent development department than any other company.
I didn't hear that part. You what more than with talent development?
We spend more money on that structure than any other company our size. We've got our own. We're not a huge company. We're like 200 employees, 250 employees now. We're growing a bit. And we spend millions on training, education, support, all of these things that are required. I would take some of that $10 million to say, if we came across 2 or 3 years where we really struggled and my cost of overhead was going to be a detriment to us losing money, I'd put a rainy day fund of that $10 million aside, because I know that as soon as you dismantle something you've built, your ability to build it back again is so hard, so difficult. So keep that going, because you know that you will get through that dip. But you're going to get, not only are you going to go through the dip, you're going to go through the dip and nobody's lost their excitement about being with the company because you still support them. And then when things, so And we're actually going to do better at the less work we have because that's the way we're structured. So we're going to make the most out of a skinnier market. And when things start to pick up, we haven't lost a step. We're going to continue on because this is all about long-term success, not short-term. So some of that money I would put aside for the rainy day fund so we didn't have to dismantle our support structure.
Cash is, sometimes they say cash is the oxygen of the business, but you're putting it right up there with people. You're saying, all right, I don't have oxygen without cash and without well-trained, developed people.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just, do a project, get a project done and make really high profit on the short term if I don't know that I have the right people to do it again and to do it over and over and over again the right way.
I think about it like rolling a 10-ton concrete ball. It takes so much effort to get it going. But once it's going,
Ooh, I like that.
don't let it stop because you will go back to ground zero again.
Ooh, good metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good metaphor to end on.